What one doesn't know, the other does. Marcus and Kurt on FM 96.3 and AM 620. WVMT.
Welcome back to the Morning Drive. Marcus and Kurt with you. And in studio with us, Meg Hansen. She is the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Good morning, Meg.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
If you'll just bring that microphone right close, and that would be great.
Is that better?
Much better. Thank you so much. So, Meg, you are running for Lieutenant Governor. How old are you, by the way? Because you came in, and I'm like, she's got to be 14.
Yeah, I think most people think I look like I'm 12. No, I'm 34.
But Meg, stay a little closer to the microphone. You sort of drifted back. Stay right on that. Yep. There you go.
34.
34, okay. And how long have you been in Vermont?
10 years.
Give us a little bit of your background, because you have a unique background.
That's right, I do. I was born in India. I left when I was 7 months. My mother's family immigrated to Dallas, Texas. And I've had an opportunity to live in many parts of the world, in the Middle East, in Italy, in Norway. And I moved to the upper Connecticut River Valley. It's called the Upper Valley, around Windsor County and, Hanover, in southern Vermont about a decade ago to attend grad school at Dartmouth College. And even while I was attending, Windsor was my home. And that's also where I met my husband. And so it kind of started a whole new chapter of my life there. And so I consider myself a Vermonter.
So if I may ask, where did the Republican roots come from? How did you develop your Republican values?
That's actually really interesting. My family's not very political, but as I said, I had an opportunity to live in many parts of the world. So after I graduated high school, I wanted to be a doctor. My father and my mother, who passed away when I was very young, they were doctors. And so he said, well, an Indian medical education is really good. And the Indian medical education system just follows the British one, where you go right after high school if you have good grades.
Okay.
And so I went to India to study. And that was a very formative experience for me. Because I actually really like writing, and I was very interested in politics, but I guess it's my family really stressed science and really stressed having a profession that's like tangible. So medicine would be that. And so my time there in India, and understanding the system there, I lived in Italy and I lived in Norway. And as I kind of lived in these places, I was really conscious of trying to understand how those states work. Mm-hmm. And through that, and through a lot of reading, that's how I personally came to, well, it wasn't just theory, also practical consequences. I was able to understand that this is what I really believe in. So a very formative book for me was F.A. Hayek's The Road to Serfdom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Meg, what has made you decide to enter the race for lieutenant governor?
So, as I said, when we lived in Windsor, my then boyfriend, now husband, we lived in Windsor. And so every morning we would drive to go to Dartmouth. It's about 30 minutes. And we would always go through the downtown part, which is closed storefronts. We see a lot of junkies, just widespread devastation. And this was something that we faced every day. And then we went to Norwich, which is on the way, which is really wealthy, and of course Hanover. And so this was sort of it had played a really, really strong sort of influence on us, because we were like, what is happening? Why is this the case? And this is also true in Springfield, which used to be the machine tool capital. Windsor used to be really prosperous. So in sort of understanding that, it became really important to me. I just felt like I really want to get involved, and I really want to help Vermont. So I applied for something called a Republican Leadership Initiative. It's a fellowship. Mm-hmm. And you have to apply with the RNC. And I was chosen as Vermont's first fellow. We never had one before. And I was connected with the Vermont GOP leadership and in Windsor County. And so that was this was back in 2014. So this was kind of how it began, my involvement with trying to, help people and community engagement. And so I'm getting to answer your question. So I founded a small communications firm. It's called Pearson Harlett. And then through that, I've been working on various policy efforts, multimedia efforts, I have a show called Dialogues with Meg Hansen. It's on the YCN network, and it airs on 11 public access stations. I worked with the House Republican Caucus, which is how I met you, Kurt, when you were a rep. And I was also the executive director of a small health policy think tank called Vermonters for Healthcare Freedom. So I've kind of been doing all these things for the last 5 years, really engaged, like full time. And I felt that while we were able to do some really good work, we weren't able to move the needle. And I just felt like if this is what I'm really committed to, this vision for a new Vermont, then it's incumbent on me then to step up and put everything on the line, put my name on the ballot, put myself out there, and campaign statewide. Because this is not just for a House district or a county. This is, statewide. And so it seemed like the lieutenant governorship was a good place to do that.
Right. So we're talking with Meg Hansen this morning, candidate for the Republican nomination for lieutenant governor. If you have a question for Meg, give us a call, 888-414-0303. Meg, on your webpage for the lieutenant governor candidacy, it says the moral path for Vermont is to become a pro-prosperity and pro-freedom state. So can you elaborate a little bit on what that means? Because when I hear pro-prosperity, obviously that's a good thing. Who wouldn't be in favor of prosperity or freedom? But can you delve a little deeper on what that means?
Okay, so actually you said that everybody would be in favor for prosperity, but what we hear over and over again is that we have an affordability crisis. So I want to know, when did we become a people that stopped believing in the beauty of our dreams? When did we become a people that just want to get by? I thought that the American dream, or even just individually, it's about trying to live your best life. So when we think about prosperity, you need to have freedom to get to, strive for prosperity, to pursue prosperity. And by that I mean that we should be empowered, all of us Vermonters should be empowered to lead the best lives that we want to create for ourselves and our families.
Okay, but how do you do that?
So in terms of freedom, I think that it's very important to have economic freedom, healthcare freedom, and education freedom. Those are the three pillars of our society right now in Vermont. And how do we do that specific policy-wise? Well, right now, or in 2019, Vermont was one of the worst states to start a business. I think the fourth overall tax burden. That's the opposite of economic freedom. Tax reform. See, I understand that I'm running for lieutenant governor, and so I'm not going to actually be able to change things. But these are really important conversations that no one's having, and that as I run, like right now, I'm able to talk about these things. So tax reform is really, really important. As long as we keep taxing and spending, people are just going to continue to leave. The state has to fulfill its pension debt, because I don't know that there are many people in the legislature who are under 40 or under 35, especially on the Republican side. But these are issues that I, as a millennial, my generation, and those that follow me will have to deal with. If the state goes bankrupt, if the pensions aren't fulfilled, who's going to carry that? We're going to do that. And
so do you disagree with when you talked about all the talk is about affordability, do you disagree with Governor Scott's agenda about affordability?
No, but I think we should strive for more than that. I mean, it's not just about somehow getting by. We should be prosperous. So by that, I mean, we should be able to start businesses, not just worry about, how do we keep the businesses that are around? Let's just kind of save them. We're not even talking about that. So we've seen a hollowing out of the middle class. We've seen a systematic deindustrialization of the rural areas. I mean, our campaign is called Small Towns, Big Hearts. The whole point of that's because that's who we are. Yesterday at the State of the State address, Governor Phil Scott acknowledged that the towns that have seen the greatest increase in terms of GDP population were all in Chittenden County. I mean, what about whereas in southern Vermont, where I'm from, I mean, there's a complete, Rutland used to be a booming area with the marble quarries and slate quarries. Springfield used to be the machine tool capital. Heartland used to be that, and now it's just devastation everywhere.
So let me ask you a couple of questions because there's a couple of points that you've made that I'd like to touch on. First off, that one right there. Mm-hmm. So one of the arguments that's been made about the rural communities, mm-hmm. one of the things that makes it tough, especially to bring in companies and businesses into rural communities, is the infrastructure of the internet, getting fiber, getting cable internet, whatever it may be. We've got to get 21st century technology out to these rural communities. How would you help advocate to make that happen?
I think that in terms of where we are, we've kind of gone beyond broadband. What about satellite? Have you heard about that? There's a satellite way to get internet to rural communities.
Yes, I've used it. I don't think that it works as well as obviously a wired system, but yes, I've used it.
So there are innovative ways to do that, but I think it's not about, okay, now look at the state that we are in. Let's say, the rural communities are sort of, falling apart, and then how do we get people in? It's not about that. We have to understand that there were people here, there were companies, and they left.
How do we get them back?
And that happens by changing the laws. I mean, we're not a business friendly state. Because you know why? Because industrialization and growing businesses is not the highest priority of the legislature. It's not.
So if what you really want to do is change the laws and to make a difference, why Lieutenant Governor, which you have already acknowledged is relatively ceremonial in a way, because it's really kind of an advocacy position. But all that being said, why not run for rep or run for senator where you could be in the legislature, where you could potentially make a difference?
You think that it doesn't make a difference to talk about these issues?
Oh, I absolutely do. But I'm just wondering why for you, because it sounds like you really want to make these changes happen. I get the energy, the feeling that you would like to make those changes versus just having the dialogue.
Right. And I mean, this is not just about me, right? This campaign is not about me. It's about a fundamental shift, a systemic shift in our government. And I worked very closely with the House Republican caucus for a few years. So it's not like I haven't been there. I attended the caucus meetings, even the Democratic ones, and I've seen the system as it is. And I don't think that one or two people, yes, I absolutely think that people should run for office. But in terms of what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to do, it's not about introducing this piece of legislation or that piece of legislation. It's about a fundamental shift. And you can't get to those actual pieces unless you change the underlying philosophy, and you're not going to get that unless you present Vermonters with a new vision for a new future, as Kurt said, pro-freedom, pro-prosperity. That needs to be the first thing, and then we can start finding the pieces to make that actually happen.
So going back to the affordability question, because you've already acknowledged the fact that you would like to see tax cuts happen.
Yes.
So in talking with Governor Phil Scott, the approach, he would like to see some tax cuts as well, but at the same time, how do you also increase the tax base? Because that has been one of the big pieces of Governor Phil Scott's agenda. He mentioned it in the State of the State in regards to economic development.
So if you want people to come here, there are some states, like let's say Texas or North Carolina, where people are moving to largely. And there are some states where people are fleeing, right? So the economy is the biggest thing. It's the middle class. The middle class consists of people who want to have upwardly mobile careers. They want to be able to buy a house. I would love to buy a house. I would love to be able to afford to have kids and raise them here in Vermont. But for people like me who are under the age of 40, it's not possible right now. It's just not possible. So if Vermont right now has the second oldest population in the nation. So if you want to change that, it's about creating a place where people like me can actually, grow our lives, save money, retire. So it starts with the economy, number one. It's about, so when we have things like the $15 minimum wage, And I'm bringing that up because I heard Senator Tim Ashe on this radio show a little while ago, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, whenever you have a piece of legislation, there are some winners and some losers. So I'm advocating for the losers. You know, the losers are the people who come on my show, the farmers, the mom and pop, you know, business owners, the people who are always losing out. If you're driving an agenda that isn't focused to creating economic growth, freedom, you know, we're not going to be able to do that. And also, healthcare is a very important part of that. Affordable healthcare, right? Making insurance affordable. That's also another part of it. That's also what drives a lot of people out.
I think we've got a call for you, Meg.
Let's go to the phone lines. Good morning. You're on with Meg Hansen.
Good morning, Meg. I think you have a huge uphill battle, but I am really encouraged that you're going for it.
Thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. I wanted to just point out that even at the pinnacle of intellectual elitism at Middlebury College, they had to admit free market, it was in their public statement yesterday, required them to raise wages, not a government telling them, but the free market in the area for the what labor is costing is actually driving higher wages. Just as when they talk about how we're going to raise taxes, if you drive into Milton, once you cross the Colchester line, where Milton invested into a large sewer facility, and now all the industrial places that are built in Milton, they all pay property taxes. And I'm sure the Costco gas pumps that are sitting there empty are paying huge property taxes. So it comes. And I love the fact that you're going for it. I can't hear you respond, so I'm going to hang up and listen. But I wish you the best, and I'm going to donate money to your campaign.
Thank you so much.
Meg, what's your comments on that?
Well, I really appreciate the encouragement. Thank you very much.
We've got another call for you.
Good morning. You're on with Meg Hansen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to hear you're running. It's nice to have another Republican up there. But you really seem to get it, that the lower middle class existence in Vermont is more at risk from not surviving by the stroke of the legislative pen than we are from any firearm, any carbon, any pollution, or anything else. Thank you so much for running. You've got my vote.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Let me, if I may, I'm going to ask a quick question because the caller brought it up, and it was brought up in the State of the State address. Governor Phil Scott is putting money and putting efforts forth toward the global change effort, toward global climate change, by helping to electrify and bring more electric vehicles into the marketplace. What are your feelings on this particular topic? Do you support what the governor is doing in this area?
So before I can, well, you didn't ask me that. You know, is climate change real? You didn't ask me that. But this is my answer. Mild climate change has been demonstrated, but the catastrophic ones are speculated, and that's a very important distinction that we need to make. When there's been no, it's easy to post-predict anything, but you need to predict something. So while I understand that it's important, the idea that the world is going to end in 12 years, no, I don't buy that. When we talk about climate change, I always look at what is the objective. When we have policies, whatever the policies are, what is the objective? For me, it is human flourishing. What does that mean? That means I want Vermonters or Americans or people to be empowered, as I said earlier, with the freedom to make choices in healthcare, in education, in the economy, to build the lives that they want. That, for me, is the objective. And so if that is the objective, then it's industrialization, it's economy, it's expanding economic freedom. However, when you look at really some of the extreme climate activists, their underlying philosophy is that nature should be pristine, nature is pure, and you want to minimize human impact. I understand that human beings, all of us, we survive by impacting the environment. Now, this is not to say that we want pollution. We don't want pollution. We're anti-pollution because that hurts us, right? That goes against human flourishing. But is it about human flourishing or minimizing human impact? What is the basic underlying goal? If your goal is to minimize human impact, then climate is your number one. Then it's all about, let's move the population into densely populated areas. Let's try to get, actually, Senator Tim Ash said that to Ann Galloway. We have to constantly think about ways, I'm paraphrasing, to get Vermonters out of their cars. It's about public transportation. So that is completely opposite to my goal. So when I talk about climate change, we don't want pollution. We want clean waterways. Everybody wants that. Everybody on earth who's sane believes that. But my goal is human flourishing. And for that, it's always industrialization. It's the economy. It's the middle class. It's jobs. It's work.
So you don't believe it's possible to flourish and to make a minimal impact?
How can we do that?
I think looking at industries like solar and other types of industries that could potentially come to Vermont to make a difference.
No. But then we're not understanding what minimizing human impact means. By minimizing human impact, it's not letting us flourish. It's not allowing us to expand, to build a house where you want. I think Act 250 2.0 talks about that, and even Governor Phil Scott talked about that. You're basically social engineering, social restructuring, getting people out of the rural areas into concentrated, densely populated centers with which walkable, where you don't really use cars. But maybe if I want to flourish, I want to have a job somewhere that maybe it takes me an hour to drive there. But that's the best way.
Meg, what's your basic thoughts on gun control issues, things that the legislature's passed on gun control, red flag laws, etc.? I mean, we don't have a lot of time, but if you can make it fairly concise.
Yes, I don't support any of that. I support the Second Amendment and Article 16.
So none of the laws that the legislature's passed?
No. Okay. But, I mean, what can I do about it? Nothing, right? But I don't support it, no.
We got another minute left, so I just wanted to give you another opportunity.
So let me ask you this in regard to the campaign, because I think it's going to be tough to get into any other in-depth issue in that short amount of time. Corey Parent's considering running from Franklin County. I don't know if he's going to, but he's quoted in VT Digger as saying, there are a lot of names, but I don't think there is any viable Republican candidate at this point. Obviously, you're the only announced candidate. What's your reaction to Senator Corey Parent saying that?
Joe Benning decided recently, or he made an announcement about invoking Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, not to say anything bad against another Republican in public. And I believe that Senator Joe Benning is one of Corey Parent's mentors. So I'm sad to see that he's not following his mentor's advice.
Okay.
Meg Hansen, thank you so much for stepping in here. Good luck in the race ahead. We look forward to future conversations with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg.
All right, we'll be right back with more right here on The Morning Drive.